22 countries, over 475 million people, and an area of 13 million square kilometers. It's what we know as the Arab world. And this Arab world has picked a side in this war. They're all rallying behind Palestine. When Hamas attacked Israel on the 7th of October, a lot of Arab nations were quick to comment. Some directly condemned Hamas. Others just slammed the attack on Israel. They also talked about restraint and support to Palestine. But on Tuesday, the mood shifted and the positions hardened. A rocket hit Gaza's Al-Ahli hospital. Hundreds of people were killed, and that seemed to be the red line for West Asia. Israel says it did not attack the hospital. It is even offering proof, video and audio proof, to show that this was a Palestinian rocket that misfired, that it was fired by the group called Palestinian Jihad. But it seems none of it matters now. By the time the Israeli denial came, the Arab world had already made its mind. All of them blamed Israel for the strikes. Their citizens took to the streets, their leaders called for accountability, and since then their stance has only toughened.
Our meeting today comes in response to the tragic and violent developments taking place in the region and to study the dangerous situation of the escalation of military operations in the Gaza Strip and its surroundings, and to declare our categorical rejection of the repeated assaults and increasing attacks by the Israeli occupation forces, despite repeated appeals to immediately stop military operations, the victims of which are children and women and elderly defenseless civilians.
That was the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia. 3 weeks ago, Riyadh and Israel were discussing a peace deal, a deal that would change West Asia. 21 days later, the same Riyadh is condemning Israel in no uncertain terms, asking it to stop its assaults and attacks on Gaza. It shows you how fast the dynamics change. And there are a lot of factors at play here. The first, of course, are the peace deals. Israel and Arab nations may have signed those deals, but they did not bring peace. The region is on the brink of a wider conflict, one that could engulf the whole of West Asia.
The long-standing issues run deep and extend well beyond the confines of Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. The events of the past 11 days have served to reignite grievances and reanimate alliances across the region. Based on my meetings and the dynamics I observe on the ground, I would say the following. The risk of an expansion of this conflict is real. Very, very real and extremely dangerous.
So where does it stop? Israel is currently pounding Gaza. The next thing they want to do is invade the Strip, and that could make things much worse. If the hospital strike was a red line, a ground invasion would be a point of no return for West Asia. And Iran has made it very clear. They said it was the beginning of the fall of Israel.
Because of the attack on the hospital, the end of the Zionist regime will begin. With every drop of Palestinian blood spilled on the ground, the Zionist regime is one step closer to its fall.
Which brings us to Tehran. Ever since the war broke out, Iran has said a lot. It warned Israel. It said it was ready to join the war. Its proxies were up in arms, and now Iran wants an oil embargo. They want to stop the flow of oil into Israel. But Iran alone cannot make that decision. That would be the call of OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC. OPEC, it's an oil cartel. And so far, it has rejected calls for an oil embargo. But the very talk of it has spooked markets. You see, West Asia is central to the global oil economy. A third of the world's oil comes from here, from this region. If they impose an oil embargo, oil prices will skyrocket. And that would be disastrous for the global economy. It's not happening yet. But oil markets are wary because it will not be unprecedented if it happens. Arab states have done this before. In 1973, Arab states launched a war against Israel. They then imposed an oil embargo. As it turned out, they did not win the war. But the fact is, they were united. And 50 years later, the same thing is happening. The Arab world has been dragged into yet another war. They may still be projecting unity and rallying behind Palestine. And they have their fault lines. Their support for Palestine has its limits. And those limits are showing now. Each Arab state is looking at this conflict nervously. Jordan and Egypt fear an exodus of refugees. Gulf nations fear antagonizing Iran. And Saudi Arabia fears Iranian proxies lashing out. So they may all pretend that this is about the survival of Palestine, but chances are it is more about their own survival.